Hey guys, Joe Marler from Daniel Defense, and today we're going to show you how to install the RISII rail system on your rifle. So the RISII handguard is available in a couple different lengths, a couple different styles. We have the M4A1, which is a rifle length handguard. It's about 12¼ inches long. It's a really good handguard for anything with a 14½ inch barrel or longer with a low profile gas block, or you can even mount it on an M16 or an AR-15 with a 20-inch barrel and a rifle length gas system. The other handguard we have is the RISII M4A1 FSP. Same length as the standard M4A1, but it has a pocket cut out for a front sight base on a carbine length gas system. And the Mark 18 RISII is specifically for a 10.3 inch gun and still gives you enough clearance to mount most suppressors. Something else I'll mention about the RISII is even though it has alignment tabs on the bolt-up plate, is it's fully compatible with any type of AR-15 receiver. You can use it on an A3 or an A4, or you can even use it on an A2 or an A1 receiver that has a fixed carry handle. So let's get started. The upper we're working on today has a 14½ inch mid-length gas system. If you're using a mid-length gas system barrel, you want to make sure your gas block is small enough to fit inside of that lower rail. Not all gas blocks will. For example, the Mark 12 is a little bit wide at the bottom, and while it'll work on a carbine length gas system, the Mark 12 gas block will not work on a mid-length gas system. Okay, when you get your RISII handguard, you're going to get all the hardware you need and the tools to put it on. You're going to get a barrel nut wrench, and you're also going to get an Allen wrench for the fasteners. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our bolt-up plate and we're going to slide it over our barrel so that the alignment tabs are going to fit underneath your picatinny rail on your upper. Next we'll take our barrel nut, slide it over our barrel. We're going to thread it on hand tight. And then you're going to grab your barrel nut wrench that comes with the handguards. Okay, this is going to need to attach to a 1/2 inch drive torque wrench, and you want to set that torque wrench to 55 foot-pounds. Whenever you position the barrel nut wrench on the barrel nut, you want to make sure that the rotation of that wrench is going to pull the teeth into the notches of the barrel nut. We're going to torque it down until we get an audible click. Okay, barrel nut is now torqued. Once you have the barrel nut torqued, you will notice that your bolt-up plate still remains loose. Okay, don't freak out about that. Okay, that is how it's designed. It's supposed to remain loose until you slide the rail system on, install your fasteners, and tighten everything up. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the upper off of the vise. We're going to put it on the workbench, and we're going to install our gas block and our gas tube. Okay, so now that we have our barrel nut installed and our bolt-up plate, now we're going to get our gas tube assembly and our gas block installed. We already have our gas tube inserted into our gas block, and our roll pin is seated into our gas block, so our gas tube's not going to come out. We're going to go ahead and position this on our barrel and slide the gas block over our barrel, and we're going to insert the gas tube through the bolt-up plate and into the receiver. Once I'm there, I'm going to grab my taper pin. Okay, this is our OEM low-profile gas block. This is what comes on all of our rifles that have low-profile gas blocks, with the exception of the Mark 12. And I'm going to insert that taper pin from right to left. So as I have it oriented on target, I'm going to have it inserted from right to left. And once it starts going into the hole, I'm going to wiggle that gas block back and forth a little bit until I know it seats in as deeply as I can by hand. And you can look down the rail to the gas block and make sure that it's at top dead center. From there, we need to get that fully seated. So most gas blocks, your taper pin is going to go in from right to left. So you want to have your ejection port cover facing up as you're hammering it in. I'm going to use an upper receiver block to support my upper, and I'm going to use a front sight base block to support the front of my barrel. I'm going to grab a punch and a hammer, and I'm going to give it a few solid hits. So with our low profile gas block, when the taper pin is installed, you should have a little bit of protrusion on both sides. Once we have this done, we're going to go back to the vise and get our rail system installed and lined up to the upper receiver. We've got our bolt-up plate installed and our barrel nut. We've got our gas block and our gas tube installed. Now it's time to get our handguard installed. We're going to slide the handguard over the barrel assembly until it mates up with your upper receiver. And you've got indexing marks on here, T for top, L for left, R for right. We're going to position this into our Picatinny rail alignment tool. Okay, this is a product that we use in-house. If you don't have one of these, there are some options. You can use a detachable carry handle, you can use a one-piece scope base, you could even get away with using an accessory like a bipod adapter, something that has a couple fasteners that's long enough to bridge the gap between your upper and your rail system. Okay, we've got our upper and our handguard fixtured in our vise. I've got about half of this fixture on the upper receiver and I have half of the fixture on the rail system. We want to make sure that we've got perfect alignment so that if we do install backup iron sights, we're able to achieve a good zero. Now there's 6 fasteners that are going to come with your RISII. You have 4 fasteners that are 7/8 of an inch long, and these are going to be your side screws and your top screws, and these are installed from your receiver towards your barrel. And then you have 2 shorter screws. These are 3/4 of an inch. These are going to be your bottom screws, and they install from your barrel towards your receiver. With the 5/32 Allen wrench that comes with your handguard, you want to get all of these screws started. Get them all started first by hand before you start tightening anything down. Use the ball end on the long arm of the Allen wrench. It will really speed up the process for you. It doesn't matter where you start. You can start on the side screws or the top screws or the bottom screws. It doesn't really matter. Whenever we get to the point of tightening them down, we're going to tighten them down in a crisscross pattern similar to the method of tightening lug nuts on your car. To speed this process up a little bit more, if you want to get a low power drill motor with a 5/32 ball end, this will help you get them running all the way relatively quickly. So if you're going to be installing a lot of these, it's definitely the way to go. So I'm going to run it in. And just like lug nuts on a car, we're going to do them in a crisscross pattern. Now that everything feels nice and tight, I'll go back with the short arm of my 5/32. Just give it a little bump, make sure they're tight. The torque specification is 29 to 32 inch-pounds, but it's really easy just to get them hand tight and give them another 1/4 to a 1/2 turn. So now that we have the main body of the rail system installed, we need to put on our lower rail. Okay? The lower rail is always the last thing to be installed on the RISII. Okay? If you put this on and tighten it down before you put on your bolt-up screws, you're going to risk damaging your rail system back here. And if you decide to remove your rail system for any reason, you want to take your lower rail off first. Get it out of the way so that the bottom screws have somewhere to go without damaging your bottom rail. So to attach the lower rail, you're going to use these 4 slotted fasteners with a nylon washer. These thread into self-locking helicoil inserts to prevent them from backing out. You're going to have 4 that hold the rail on, and you'll have 2 spare screws that are installed to the front of the rail in case you lose a couple of these. All you need to install the lower rail attachment screws is a standard flathead screwdriver. A gunsmithing screwdriver is preferred, something that's hollow ground and is going to give you maximum amount of purchase inside the slot of the screw. All right, so now that we have the handguard installed, now we can check to make sure everything is aligned properly. We can look and feel down the top rail of the receiver and the handguard, make sure everything's nice and plumb. We can look down the edge to make sure that there's no tilt upward or downward, which can be adjusted by just loosening and tightening screws in a different fashion. We can check to make sure that our barrel is properly centered in our handguards. Everything looks good on this, so now I'm going to install our muzzle device. So the last step of our installation is we're going to reinstall our muzzle device. In this case, we're going to be using a standard DD flash suppressor and a crush washer. When I took this upper receiver apart, I had to remove the flash hider, and I'm going to be putting the same flash hider back on, but I'm using a brand new crush washer. Got our muzzle device on hand tight. Grab your AR-15 multi-tool or a 3/4 inch wrench. Tighten it down. Make sure my wrench flats are on the left and the right. My port's at the top. Everything's nice and tight, and we're ready to install our bolt carrier group and charging handle. Put it back on our lower and function test. All right guys, it's really as simple as that. It doesn't take that long. It probably only takes about 20 minutes. If you've got the right tools, it makes all the difference in the world. Just don't forget, when you're working on an upper, especially when it comes to torquing barrel nuts, torquing flash hiders, whether you're putting them on or taking them off, make sure you've got that upper receiver isolated somehow. You can use a Geisley reaction rod, which is probably the best way to do it. Not only does it isolate your upper receiver group, but it isolates the barrel assembly as well. If you don't have a reaction rod, there's lots of other things out there that you can use. You can use a traditional Brownells clamshell upper receiver block. The Magpul bev block works really well. So just make sure you're isolating your upper before you start turning wrenches on it. RISII M4A1, pretty straightforward. Same installation process for the RISII Mark 18, and we're going to show you guys how to do the RISII M4A1 FSP here in just a minute.